Hey, if you caught that last episode of Game of Thrones, you were treated to a masterclass in storytelling by Tyrion. Um, I'm here to tell you a little bit more about how Tyrion can help you be a better B2B storyteller. But before I do that, spoiler alert, I am going to talk about how Game of Thrones ends. Yep, the entire series is over. We've seen that last episode. If you haven't seen it, you probably don't want to watch this video unless you don't mind finding out what happens. Okay, so now that I've said that, let's talk a little bit about what down in that last episode. Tyrion at one point makes a very impassioned plea to the rest of the lords and ladies of Westeros as to why Bran should be the king at the end of the series. And what he says is that the reason Bran makes the best king is that Bran has the best story. And he says, here's the story. He fell from a high tower and lived. He knew he'd never walk again, so he learned how to fly. Very short, very succinct, but in that little story, he's created a synopsis of something that's very powerful and something that you can also use as a B2B marketer. So let's get into a little bit more detail. There are two elements that Tyrion nails in creating this little story. The first one is that he is able to articulate the challenge or problem that the character has, and in doing so, create empathy for him. And part two is that Tyrion is then able to paint a picture of the world and how it's different for that character once they've overcome the challenge. So those are the two pieces. Let's look at each one. First, he creates the empathy by articulating the problem. In Tyrion's case, he's able to talk about the fact that Bran is unable to walk. In the world of Westeros, being unable to walk is pretty much a death sentence. Any perceived weakness is pounced on by your enemies and by other people who only want to see you suffer and die and go away. That's how Westeros works, right? So for Bran to not be able to walk is an incredible, incredible disadvantage. He is someone who would be the longest of long shots to become a king in a world where kings are supposed to be warriors who can slay monsters and defeat White Walkers and win mighty battles. It's just not going to happen, right? The odds are super, super long. As a result, you create empathy for a character like that. A character who has long odds is someone that deep down inside we all want to see succeed. They are an underdog. And so Tyrion does a great job of articulating why Bran would be such a great underdog. Everybody in Westeros knows what a disadvantage it is for him to be unable to walk. In part two, he also now articulates how the world is different for Bran once he overcomes the challenge. What does Bran do? He's not satisfied with just regaining the ability to walk. He's not looking and saying, wow, if I could only just walk again. He looks and he says, how can I do something even better than walking? And what he does is he becomes the three-eyed raven. Now he's able to fly, and he can see things that even people who could walk could never see. He has power that goes beyond what a normal person, a quote-unquote normal person would be like. He's now even better than that. And that articulation and that change of going from the place of great disadvantage and being an underdog to being someone who overcomes that and does something even beyond what you think is basically the storytelling process that B2B people need to follow. Think about it. When you're talking to a prospect, the first thing that you want to do is let them know that you understand their challenge. You want to create that empathy and connection with them. You want to be able to say to them, hey, I get it. Because of the fact that you're dealing with this problem, it's holding you back. It's keeping you from doing all the things that you want to do. Maybe it's holding you back in your career. Maybe it's making your department the laughingstock of your organization. Maybe you don't have the respect of the C-level peers that you would like to have the respect of. Maybe it's keeping you from getting the kind of budget that you want. Those are the kinds of things that you need to be able to express and understand. You want to paint the picture that you know their problem and that you want to help them solve it. You understand the stakes of not being able to solve the problem. Then the second thing you need to do is to be able to paint the picture of the world, what it's like for them once you have solved the problem with them. Once you've helped them overcome that challenge, how is their world different? A lot of times, customers in B2B are so far down in the weeds, they're so bogged down in a problem that they can't imagine what a world would be like without the problem. All they can imagine is just, wow, What if I could just take away the problem? That's all they can think of, take away the problem. But what happens when you take away the problem that creates an even better situation? How can they become the person that flies like Bran? How do they suddenly get the budget that they want? How do they suddenly become much more respected and have the ear of the other senior leaders within the organization? How do they take on more strategic initiatives, perhaps, that allow them to further their own personal career goals? Those are the things that you've got to do as a B2B storyteller. So, take a lesson from Tyrion. Learn the two elements of B2B storytelling that are going to drive success for you and your business.